Hello and welcome to Unsourced Wall. My name is Elvis, and as always, I'm your host. Alright, this is going to be a short one. Again, I'm catching up on all these episodes because it's been hectic on my end. Still trying to go with weekly releases and doing my best, get things in order. There's only a few things I want to talk about today, including one really new development, and let's just, jump right into that. First off, we have the brand new release of the full trailer for Venom 2, also known as Venom, Like to Be Carnage, and it's a really good trailer. This has been a movie where I've been hoping it wouldn't veer too far from the first one. I was worried since Ruben Fleischer directed the first movie and the Zombieland movies wasn't coming back, and I think that his voice was a really powerful part of why the first one worked. That horror comedy, very stripped down nature really helped to make those character performances and plot pop, even if it was a little more generic. When they said that Andy Serkis was directing this one, it did get me a little worried, but honestly, going by the trailer, the tone, the look, the style, it's all just totally in line with what the first one set down. And that really does calm me down because of how now we can have a good settled first one and then a good sequel that really does adhere to it. You don't see that too often, where usually we get a sequel that doesn't know really what to do. Hopefully that's not the case here, and I am more optimistic now. Overall, the plot from the trailer does seem to be more generic, as well, but that's not too bad because the character dynamics are really the highlights here. It all seems really energetic. That's to be expected from Tom Hardy and Venom at least, but I'm also surprised by Woody Harrelson as Cletus Cassidy. We only got a bit of him in the first movie, but he really does seem to be, trying to do a character here, which is a relief that it's, not defaulting into the standard Woody Harrelson character, like there's more going on there. And most of all, the Ron McDonald wig is gone, and good riddance. And also, a final point, we do get to see Carnage as Carnage here, just a tease, and they just seem to be really going all off his powers, really showcasing what makes his power set different from Venom. And overall, it looks like a strong sequel, which is really rare for the comic book movie realm. So kudos and good luck, and I'm definitely going to see when it comes out. Moving on to what I read this week, I did read something over the past week that I'd like to talk about, and that is America Chavez Made in the USA number 3. I've been following this mini because it's something where I don't want to bag on a character if I'm not up to date on them. You always want your arguments and criticisms to be well rounded out and factual. Or hey, best case, maybe you get to prove yourself wrong. And actually, I've been enjoying this mini so far. It hasn't been great, it's just okay. It's definitely doing course correcting to salvage the character, and number 3 actually draws like the hardest line in the sand for America going forward. Because it brings up the possibility that America isn't just this cliche racist alien, but might actually be a Latin person from the Bronx. That's really exciting to me because, for one, there's a huge amount of difference between a character that's meant to be Latino, Latin, Latina, Latinx, being over the top and, expressive because, well, there are Latin folk who are that way. I mean, I have cousins who are like that, but meanwhile, I'm more of a gringo. We're all different. And there's a difference between something like that and a racist alien who's brown and then decides to represent all Latin people everywhere, even though she's just an alien who's brown, which makes her a racist character, like, no matter what. That just needs to be fixed, or else, it'll just stay that terrible, terrible idea. So her possibly being from the Bronx and being Latin is amazing, and it helps a lot. I just hope it isn't a villainous trick because it's given through a villainous monologue. So fingers crossed. I don't think Marvel will be that stupid because I wouldn't, think that they would dangle that in front of Latin people and say, oops, nope, sorry, but I wouldn't put it past them. And one last thing I want to mention is that I have seen a lot of people get really mad at this. Like, this is racist because they're ruining a character that meant a lot to a lot of people. And you got that backwards, motherfuckers. It's actually helping a character a lot because it's drawing her away from all the stuff that doesn't work about her representation. You can't just paint a character brown, even if they're like an alien from another dimension, and say, this represents you, this race in real life. That's not how that works. They don't represent anything. But one thing I can slightly agree on is that this only compounds America's issues of having an incoherent background and foundation because it has been all over the place, in terms of her minis and appearances. That said, even if that hurts this in the short term, it can only go up from here. That's something tangible to her now. She can actually mean something, and that's really amazing. So fingers crossed, kudos. I enjoyed a mini. It's really, really clunky, but still not as bad as Gabby Rivera's racist BS. So, overall, thumbs up, thumbs middle. Anyway, let's move on to what I watched this week, and that is going to be the first season of Netflix's new Jupiter's Legacy show. It's 8 episodes, and each episode is like 50 minutes long, so it's around 8 hours of content. And this is all important to tell you, because when I, describe what went wrong, you're going to need that context. Alright, so Jupiter's Legacy is Mark Millar's current magnum opus. Its first Maxis series is about 10 issues long, and its first arc in a Maxis series has a turning point and around like 3 issues in. Because when you get to the third issue, that's where the characters are set up, that's where the world is set up, that's where the plot, the inciting incidents, that's where the narrative hook and the core premise, that's where they all get laid out, and the comic actually becomes about something. It has direction and intent. So that's all done by issue 3. And you think it'd be simple to do that in a show, you could maybe expand some stuff, but eventually you get to the plot of the story, but the show doesn't do that. It doesn't even do the second best thing. It doesn't do anything rational. It does the stupidest thing I've ever seen. Because by the time you get to the end of the 8th hour of the show, it's adapted like maybe 1.5 issues of the comic, which is insanity. You only get character names, some middling details, and nothing else. No character development, no plot progression. You don't even know what the plot is by the end of the season because it never gets to it. That's shocking. It becomes this meaningless mess. And there's still some good stuff. It does at least try to expand on some really glossed over details in the comic. But then 9% of the time, it spends that it's overbloating stuff that was never important, and then doing so really incompetently. The show itself starts from a backwards mentality where characters are detracted way back from where they even started in the comic, just so that they have more of an obvious and superficial character arc. But since the show ends before the plot even begins, that means that no one even comes close to getting any development, let alone any arc. It's stagnant in the worst ways. It's tedious. The best/worst example of this is the character Chloe Sampson, who in the comics is basically the main character of this maxi series, the real hero of the piece. And in that maxi series, he's initially a bit naive, a bit airheaded, maybe a bit tad self-centered, a little bit of a girl, very sheltered daughter, character type. And over the course of the 10 issues, becomes more mature, more world-weary, and more knowledgeable, and just more capable and active in the world around her and with her own heroics. It's not a lot, but it's something. It's simple, gets the job done. And to counterpoint her small arc, in the comics, her brother is one of the main villains, and he's basically just this druggy, burnout, narcissistic, waste-head douchebag who is insufferable to everyone and hates everything. Which makes sense because he's the villain. And Mark Millar writes very obvious villains. But when you get to the show, they basically give all of her brother's traits to her, to Chloe. Alright, so now you have who is meant to basically be the main character, the main hero, now acting like one of the main villains. I get that. You want her arc to be more obvious and blunt and therefore seem earned. But then, because of the structure of the show and how it's pacing and adapting the comic, she gets no progression at all. Nothing. So she spends the entire season acting like a villain, acting like a burnout wastehead, and that's it. That's the show. It's insanity. And it's just so static. There's nothing to care about because the characters do nothing, learn nothing, go nowhere, and there's no engagement or hook. And that's a shame. The show does have this good idea of, let's explain some things, because the comic is really compressed at times. But it doesn't even work if it doesn't even start to explain the things that were needed to be explained in the comic. It just starts so far back that it ends up not even reaching anything close to the story or the questions. And so, what's the point? Now, it seems like Netflix wants this to run for 10 to 12 seasons, which is insane, no doubt. But I do think that this is going to at least get season 2. I mean, Netflix paid $35 million to Millar for the rights to all his comics, so I don't think they're going to kind of make this a one-off. But I don't see it lasting past that, especially not as it is right now. So unless it did extraordinarily bad, fingers crossed that season 2 is better. Overall, thumbs down, score of 4 out of 10. Anyway, I just want to say thanks so much to everyone who's still listening. It means a lot to me. Hope you have a great one. Hope everything's going good. I'm going to put the link below to my other podcast with my 2 great friends, Rolver Queen and AJ. And check us out. We're on Spotify as well. It's a great time. Having a lot of fun doing that. And anyway, I'm going to give a shout out to the cover artist for the show at DOTEMCE. Please check them out. They're amazing. They deserve all the love they can get. And have a good one. And see you again next time.